right there at the district complex.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I've never been to a school board meeting, so.
Can I make a suggestion? Don't go.
No, that's the problem. You show up for something and you become president, so. I'm good. You ready?
Yeah, ready.
So, as we're doing this, do I need to look at the camera or
You can look at
Janet?
it. Yeah.
No? That way you're not staring at the camera.
Right. Exactly.
So Tom, tell us who you are and how you began teaching.
Well, my name is Tom Sanders, Thomas E. actually. I started teaching after I got out of college, of course, but the way I got to teaching was some people might say, what teacher caused you to become a teacher? But that never really happened to me. I had some teachers that were my favorite, that were wonderful, and I'll remember forever. But I actually got into teaching because at one time I was very active in sports, and went to college on an athletic scholarship. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a coach. And in order to be a coach in high school, I had to become a teacher. So I became a combination teacher and coach in order to do that.
And what subjects did you teach?
Taught mainly American history, several other history courses, but American history was my favorite.
Mind if I try and turn this light on real quick? That's okay. Do I just pull this thing? Or is there like a button?
I think there's something you turn there.
Just add a little bit more light. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
And what did you coach?
Well, I coached everything, as a matter of fact. Football, I was assistant coach because that wasn't my major sport. I went to college on a basketball scholarship, and that was my major area of coaching. I was varsity coach in both, in Alabama, where I first started at a little country school there, and then at Satellite High School over in Brevard County until I got into administration. So I coached both of them. Basketball was my real sport. That's what I was a little bit better known at one time in Alabama. So that's how I got there.
And what brought you to Mount Dora?
Well, we came to Mount Dora. It's an interesting story. We used to come over here every once in a while, and in fact, the first time we ever came, our first child, Missy, was 2 years old maybe, and we came over to go fishing in Lake Harris with a good friend of mine that was spending the week in a camper over there. And I didn't know the bypass was here. 441 just went straight, so I went straight through downtown Mount Dora. And when we got through there and looking out over Lake Dora and the houses there, I can recall right now telling Ellen, you know, this is a place I'd love to live. And so we came over here several times and just kept thinking that. And it's the reason we came to Mount Dora is also interesting. I had been talking to a sales representative of Ring and high school jewelry about going to work for him. And he offered me a job one day, which I probably should have taken and made some money, but I thought about it and I told him, I said, Bob, I appreciate it, but you know what I really want? I really want to live in a little small town where the people really care about your school, and there's a good small school that people are interested in. And he said, well, I know right where that is. And the reason being, at the time, we had just had the teacher strike in Florida, the first and only teacher strike. And when that happened, a lot of teachers walked out, and the principal at Mount Dora High School, in support of his teachers, walked out also and left a vacancy. So it was vacant, and I came over and interviewed with the superintendent at the time, Jack Morgan, and 2 weeks later, I was sitting in Mount Dora High School as principal. So I wound up coming exactly where I wanted to come, to the type school that I wanted to come to. I mean, you couldn't write a better story. It was just wonderful.
Nice. So what led to the teacher strike, and when was that?
Teaching strike was, well, I came here in 1969, so it must have been in 1969. It was an interesting time for schools at the time. You had part of the teachers walking out, part of the teachers staying. So then we had the difficulty. I was assistant principal at the time at Satellite High School. And so you had the problem of filling the space with substitute teachers. At that school, I had, 30, 40 teachers that walked out. So that was a problem. And then when they came back, you had teacher versus teacher to some degree, so it was interesting times. And it happened because the Florida Education Association at the time called for it because of teacher salaries. And that was the reason for the strike.
What was Mount Dora High School like when you arrived? How large was it?
Mount Dora High School to me was heaven. It absolutely was wonderful. I had left Satellite High School to come over here, which was a great school, almost a brand new school. Lots of bright students over there, but very diverse and came from all over the country. It sat right beside Patrick Air Force Base, so you got a lot of military kids there, and the Space Center was just beginning to bloom, so people were coming from everywhere. And it was a lot of challenges at a big school like that, although they were good. But when I came to Mount Dora High School, I could not believe it. It was just, at the time, I think we had about 600 students versus the 2,000 that I left. And the parents were so supportive. Student spirit was so good. I couldn't believe going to the basketball game. The gym would be packed full and no problems at all. I hardly did any supervision the first year or two I was here. I just get up in the stands and watch the ball game with the parents because I knew there was going to be no parent. So Mount Dora High School was a wonderful place back in those days.
Mm-hmm. How did it change throughout your time there?
Well, what happened, there was some change at Mount Dora High School, but it wasn't dissimilar from change that was going on all over the state. The change that came about was because of integration of the schools. We had a black high school, and Mount Dora High School was all white. And so when integrated, things changed. There's no question about it. You had a culture from the black community. They had their own culture, and the white students and parents had their culture. And so you're trying to mix the two and learn to get along with each other. So it was, there were some challenges at the time, and it took a few years to work through those, but that happened. But that's a big thing that happened to change the climate of Mount Dora High School itself. It took a while for the students to all learn to get along and not have problems from time to time between individuals or groups. And so that was the main thing.
Mm-hmm. Did many of the teachers change at that time as well?
Well, the staff changed some because we brought in some black teachers, which we needed. We needed to have an integrated staff, since we're having an integrated student body, so that both sides of the picture had some support there. So yeah, the staff changed to some degree.
Are there particular moments that you look back on with great fondness from your time at the high school?
Well, yeah, the thing about Mount Dora High School that I remember most were two things, really: parents and students. I really appreciated the parents. They were very supportive, most of them. Now, you never find a school where all parents are supportive, but we had an awful lot of parents at Mount Dora High School that were supportive, and they would come and assist you with activities that you were having and that kind of thing. The same is true for the students. I just appreciated a bunch of the students so much. Again, in any school, you have students that some are better acting, so to speak, than others. But I won't name any names because I certainly missed somebody, but I can remember students that were just so pleasant and so active and in clubs and this kind of stuff that you really appreciated having them. Schools are interesting from the standpoint, schools are a reflection of society. It's just that simple. The kind of parents that you have, there are a lot of students that represent that, and a lot of parents that are not supportive, aren't supportive of their own children. So it just happens that way. So the two really go together. You get a bunch of parents that are real supportive, which we had. So we had a lot of kids that were very good. We had a lot of parents that could have cared less, and we had a few problems with those students from time to time.
So why did you decide to run for school superintendent?
Well, my becoming a superintendent is kind of a long story. When I first started teaching, I really could have taught throughout my career and been happy. I like teaching. I like coaching. I'm sure coaching would have got tiresome over time, but I enjoyed teaching. But I got out of teaching for one reason: money. I was making hardly a living salary, to be honest with you. Ellen was a teacher, but we started having children, and we made the decision that once we started a family, that she'd be a stay-home mother, which we both wanted. So I was living on, we were living on one teacher salary, hardly making it, to be quite honest. And so my decision was, okay, I need to move up the ladder in order to make a little bit more money. So that's what started happening, and I started taking other jobs further up the ladder and became a guidance counselor, curriculum coordinator, assistant principal, then principal here at Mount Dora High School, and went down to the district office for a number of years as enrolled at the district office. Became the number 2 man there for a few years, and decided to go get my PhD at Florida State. And in the process of being at the district office, what I saw was some superintendents that were awfully nice people, but in my view, maybe shouldn't have been superintendent. And that's the reason I made up my mind that what we needed in Lake County was some leadership, with somebody who knew and understand schools. So when I finished my PhD at Florida State, one of the questions my committee asked me was, what do you want to do within 5 years? And I had been thinking about it, and I told them, I said, I want to be a superintendent of schools. And that's what happened. At that time, superintendency was elective. So, and that's the reason I say what I do about past superintendents. When you elect a superintendent, a lot of nice guys with good reputation get elected without really having a background in administration and leadership. And so I felt like I had those things, and I wanted to go with it and see what I could do with the school system. So I ran for it and fortunately won. I guess sometimes I think maybe it wasn't so fortunate, but.
What was the campaign process like for you?
Campaigning was terrible. Just to be honest with you, I never enjoyed campaigning. I never believed personally that the superintendency should be elected. I always thought that they ought to go out and find a qualified person and hire them. But I say it was terrible just because I'm not that type. Once I got into it, it became fine, but it was tough. You had to get out every day, all day, go to every meeting in the county and make friends and make connections, and so it was a pretty tough process.
What are your best memories of being superintendent?
Well, I have a lot of memories about superintendency. Some good, some bad. The good things about being superintendent, I liked working with our schools and working with the school people. I really enjoyed that. That's what I wanted to do, and that was the reason I wanted to get into the superintendency. So working with the school principals and trying to give leadership to them to take back to their schools was good. Just going visiting schools was good. I really enjoyed going in all of our schools and going into every classroom in the county and that kind of thing. So that's one of the more memorable parts for me. There were some things that happened that I'll always remember, and I think were good. One thing I tried, well, I didn't try, we instituted invitational philosophy into the school district, which I strongly believed in it then and still do. Invitational philosophy is simply that. You want your schools and your district office to be inviting to everybody, inviting to the students to come in, inviting them to learn once they come in, inviting parents to come on campus. Just a whole ball of wax about being invitational. And we did a lot of things, did a lot of training with teachers and people at our district staff. We completely changed the climate around every school for something as simple as parking. At the time, the principal's parking spot was clearly marked right beside his office, the closest one to the school office, and then the others parked just as close as they could, and I thought that was wrong. And we changed that so that the people in the school, the administrators, parked over by the fence or someplace and walked to the office and simply left spaces for visitors and parents to come and not have to be looking for a parking place. You know, that's so simple it sounds like you shouldn't have to do it, but and things like that made a difference. We changed every sign in the county that had to do with schools. Used to have, for example, visitors report to the office, that kind of stuff. And so those kind of signs were all around, and we changed that to welcome to all visitors, please report to the office. That's, again, simple, not a biggie, but it's just I think a little different climate and a little different invitation. And we did the same thing throughout the school for students, and things for them to do, so to make the school climate hopefully more inviting. Walking on campus, for example, put a big emphasis on when visitors or parents come to school, it needs to have an inviting look so that they feel good about coming on in and sending their kid to that school. And I'm proud to say, by the way, that Lake County, that year that I initiated it, we won the national title for Invitational School District. Out of, I don't know how many school districts were involved in it, but we did get that special recognition. So that was important to me, and I was pleased with the outcome of that. Other things that I felt good about was kind of bad in a way, meaning when I was superintendent, we had some pretty bad budget years. The legislature just didn't fund the schools. The legislature has never funded schools, right, in my view. But it was very bad back in that day, and despite that fact, I think we operated pretty good. I had a small staff, cut back staff. I made everybody on the district staff, including myself. We gave 5 days a year to schools so that they didn't have to hire substitutes and that kind of stuff. And so we went out and did those kind of jobs. A number of things like that to make it work. To build a school building, for example, was tough. We were fortunate and built several schools during the time that I was there, but it was hard. We had to make sure we were using money wisely. It wasn't just there to use. And it was so bad. One of the things that I was really proud of was our portable system. At the time, we were, as I recall, paying about $30,000 a year lease for a portable, and we had hundreds of them around. So I thought, well, why give somebody else that money? So we started building our own portables, which was better than the ones that we were leasing. And we actually had what we call Portable City. It was employees. We had just a portable crew that built the portables in an assembly line fashion, and one crew would start on one end and it'd go down till it was finished, and we were putting out about a portable a week, as I recall. Now that sounds like, well, who would want to build a portable? And I agree with that. What I wanted to do was build a first-class school for our students, but didn't have the money. We did have the students, and we didn't need to put them someplace. So I think we did that very cost-effectively, and the portables were actually pretty nice classrooms when we built them to our own specs and that kind of thing.
Were you able to impact teacher salaries during your time
No.
as superintendent?
No, I tried every year. We gave the teachers every penny that I could find to give. Of course, it wasn't mine to give. Salaries is a school board situation. They have to decide what salaries they're going to offer. And the only thing they can offer is out of whatever budget that they happen to have that came from the state. So I always, yes, I pushed the board for salaries and tried to get as much as I could, because I always felt, and I feel today, that teachers have never been appreciated and paid what they should be paid. They do a wonderful job for us, and they're just not appreciated in my view. I think personally that teachers, the general public doesn't really realize how hard a job it is to teach. I've thought many times general public that wants to complain about how bad a school is ought to go in and teach one class or teach classes one day, and then they understand a little bit. And it's always amused me that I know this is kind of a broad statement, but just about everybody knows how to run a school and teach if you listen to them. You listen to the bankers and lawyers and doctors and dentists and everything, and they'll talk about how bad the schools are and what they ought to be doing and so forth. Well, I don't know many teachers that go around talking about what the bankers should be doing or what anybody else should be doing. I've always felt and feel now that we need to let the schools, the school teachers and administrators run the schools. They're there, they're the closest to the problem, they know what needs to be done. The general public just flat doesn't know what needs to be done. They may have an idea, but they don't really know and understand what goes on. And an extension of what I'm saying there is what I said earlier. You hear some people talk about this is a good school or this is a bad school or whatever. Well, a school is nothing except an extension of society, and it's an extension of the community. And so if somebody's talking bad about some school, they're probably talking about themselves where they live, because they're sending their kids from where they live to that school. And I will assure you, for the most part, that the effectiveness of students has a lot to do with home and parents and how they're raised. And you just don't see the same all over. So there is a big difference.
What would you have changed about your experience as superintendent?
I don't think I would change anything as far as what I did. I never went into any project or change without a lot of forethought and a lot of discussion and a belief that it needed to be done. And once I implemented some program, then I felt like it was what should be done. And so I never felt bad about it. I've always had a saying that I've tried to leave with all of my school administrators and everybody about making a decision, and that is, when you've got a big decision to make, you look at every ramification that's happened, what's going to happen about everything that comes about. Then you make the very best decision that you can. And once you made that decision, you forget about it. And that's kind of what I'm saying here. Everything that I did with forethought and belief in. And so I wouldn't change any of the big things that I did. Now, having said that, I'm sure there were some day-to-day issues along the way that in fact, I know there were, that I probably made a bad decision about what to say to somebody that day or what to do. And I'm sure there are things like that I would go back and make some changes with. But on the big picture, I really wouldn't change any of that. The only change I would make would be additional things that I didn't or couldn't do at the time because of money or whatever else. There were things that I wanted to do and couldn't. But today I can say there are things I would change if it was available, because I think the school system has, not the system, but education has changed a lot. It's been 23 years since I retired as superintendent. And today, I just don't think we let teachers teach enough. And we got too many people, again, who are experts up in Tallahassee. You get people elected to the legislature that don't know beans about what to do in a school, but they won't know what to make as a law for the schools to follow. And a lot of them, in my view, are just not very good. I think the legislatures are requiring too much testing. They're requiring that teachers teach certain things certain ways. They don't know the best way to do that. I think the teachers need more freedom right now. So I really do think there's too much of that kind of thing going on. And if I were still in the business and could change anything, that would be one of the big ones, because teachers are what it's all about. When I was superintendent, I directed my staff that we weren't there to tell the school principals what to do or to tell the teachers what to do unless it was something we had to. We were there to support the schools and to support the teachers. And that's what we need. We don't need Tallahassee telling us how to run the school system. We need them to support the school system and to support teachers and give them a salary that lets them not be almost on the poverty line, some of them, if they're individual wage earners.
What advice would you give current or future teachers, people thinking about becoming a teacher?
Well, if I were going to talk to somebody who was going to become a teacher, I would advise them to really take subjects that were pertinent to what they were going to teach. Most teachers do. Most teachers major in a subject area and really know that subject area well. But then we have some people that go through school that are not real sure exactly what they want to do, so they start off taking this and then they take that, and they accumulate enough hours to graduate, but some of them are worthless as far as usability goes. So I think they were to concentrate or make a decision. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to teach, and then become just as efficient in that as they possibly can. I'd also advise them to take subject matter and to talk with people regarding working with students. You see, we got too many teachers, I think, or we used to have, that wanted to teach subject matter. I'm a math teacher. I want to teach math. Well, that's fine and good, but sometimes they forget that who they're teaching are students. So they need to teach the math to the students. And I used to tell them, my teachers in pre-sessions before school started every year, one of the things I would say to them is, work with your kids, work as hard as you can, and teach them well. But if the way you teach them, they don't learn, then teach the way they learn. And that's something that I would say to the teachers coming in. Learn how to teach students that you have, because they're not all alike. Too often we want to teach one way to a classroom of 30 kids, and it's just not happening. The students are just different. So if they spent more time learning how to deal with individual students, and the other part of that would be how to deal with, let's say, ruly students, so to speak, or students that weren't wanting to learn, they're going to have some of that. We have some students that, people that want to become teachers, that in their minds, they're looking at a bunch of students that can't wait to get to their classroom and can't wait to start learning. And reality is that's not true. So they need to learn and be ready to meet that challenge when it comes along. And I think that's something that the colleges ought to change too. The college that we need to, I think one of the things that would help teachers the most would be have more student teaching, so to speak, in college, so that when they went to the classroom, they were already kind of familiar with what this classroom is like and so forth. When I went through college, had my wife and I both, we had 6 weeks of training in a school, period. And then we were expected to go the first day and be ready to go. But I think if the teachers, while they were learning subject matter and how to teach, went out on a regular basis to the schools and saw how to put that into practice, they'd be much better able to teach when they started. And not only would they feel better, would the school be better off, they'd feel better about it themselves. Because I remember the first day I taught, I think we had 1 day of pre-planning, and I was told, there's your classroom, and here are your books, and here's what you're going to teach. And I just had to start first day teaching. And be quite honest with you, I didn't know beans about what I was doing. I learned some along the way, but I don't think it should be that way. I think they need to be better trained when they get there.
You've experienced 50 years of history in Mount Dora. What do you see, or what kinds of changes have you observed just in our community and in its connection to the school?
Well, I can truthfully say that Mount Dora has changed without question. As I said initially, when we came here, Mount Dora was a quiet little town. There wasn't even a traffic light up here at 441 at Donnelly. There was a blinker, that was it. When we left home and came out to Donnelly, I know we shouldn't have, but I don't think we ever stopped coming on, because we knew no cars were coming probably. Never locked the house, because wasn't anybody gonna bother anything. So it was a quiet, peaceful, law-abiding community at the time. Now, it's still that way to a large degree. I mean, Mount Dora is still a wonderful place to live, but time has changed and people have moved. And that's what's happened. The difference that in Mount Dora, in my view, it's just so many new people have come in. See, when I came here, the old families, so to speak, who were here. Most of the people in Mount Dora and their families had lived here their whole lives. Now we have a different culture. We got people coming from everywhere, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just different. So you got so many more people. Traffic, for goodness sakes, is terrible. No other way to say that. It's just awful because of the number of people that have come and the lack of highways and so forth to take care of it. So that's a big difference too, is the number of people and that kind of stuff. One aspect that I wish wasn't happening, but I believe there's more crime around here than there was. I know there's more now than there was. We used to think about it at all. Now we're getting a lot of breaking into cars and other kind of laws being broken and people getting killed more and that kind of stuff. And I guess that's a result of the change of culture and the different people coming in and more people. But that's a big difference also. Now, having said that, Mount Dora is still a great place to live, even though we have those problems that we didn't have back then. Because relatively speaking, if you compare it to Orlando or Tallahassee or Ocala or any of these bigger towns, same thing happens. And I'm sure some of those problems that I'm talking about have occurred over time. So even though that's happened in Mount Dora, I think that Mount Dora is still one of the best places in the world to live. It just really is.
Any other things you want to share with us that I haven't asked about? Matt, you have any questions?
That was really interesting. Yeah, do you think, because you talked about student engagement and how it's hard for some students to engage, do you think it's harder now because there's a lot of distractions, like cell phones and short attention span, things like that? Because my brother is in high school now, and I know his generation is it's hard for them to engage too. So I was wondering how you could fix that problem.
Yeah, I can talk to that. And obviously you're going to edit, and we're not running.
Yes.
Yeah. Ellen, if you get that sheet in your office, please. I got a couple things there that I can glance at and talk about probably.
So where is it?
It's on your computer, I think. Okay, let me see. Where were we? Oh, yeah, electronics. One of the areas that we're facing today that I think is a big challenge for all of us is all the ways that electronics have advanced. Back in the day when I went to school and when I first started teaching, there was not a cell phone. I mean, if you wasn't home and you want to make a call, you stopped at a telephone booth and dropped your quarter in and made the call from there. So there's been a lot of increases along those lines. The computers that we now have, the way telephones have advanced with all the electronics that are on there. I know all of that is arguable, and I think that a lot of that is good from the standpoint that that's the world today. If you're not up to date on how to operate a computer and how to use electronics and that kind of thing, then you're going to fall behind. Having said that, there is a use of the electronics for the good things, and then there's a use of electronics, I think, by kids too much, of sitting on the couch playing games or calling friends. I can't go anywhere without seeing kids walking down the sidewalk with a telephone, walking or sitting in a restaurant somewhere talking on the telephone and all of that. So again, I know that's arguable, but whatever happened to just a conversation across a table with each other rather than talking on the telephone to somebody? So I do think there's been a lot of negative effects that have come out of too much of that and the availability of too much of it for kids. And besides that, it makes available some things that too easy. For example, if a kid gets ready to call somebody and go have a beer, all they got to do is call and they're there. They ain't got to walk 10 miles across the country or something to do that. Or if they want some drugs, they know their drug dealer and they just get on the phone and call. It's just things like that I really believe are too easy to have problems with.
What happened with South Lake High School in Groveland while you
Well, South Lake High School was an interesting time. We had Claremont High School and we had Rollins High School. And the number of students down in that area was growing, so that both of those were very small high schools. And so we needed to build something in order to house all of them. And I just that's one of those hard decisions. I just made the decision that the best thing that we could do down there was to consolidate. And then we built one big new high school and combine the two high schools together. And all the students then would have a nice high school with facilities that the best schools had. Well, there was two problems with that. One was money. Today they don't seem to have a problem. They just build everywhere. But trust me, we had to squeeze and stretch and everything in order to get them and borrow to get enough money to build a high school. But getting the money was really an easy thing in a way. If you can think about rural Lake County back in that day, and every little community was their own little community. And they had the culture of their own to some degree. And so the people that lived in Claremont felt like Claremont High School was the best high school in the world. And the people in Rollins High School thought Rollins High School was the best high school in the world. But what you want to do, Tom, is put us and all together. Well, that was hard. You know, you had to convince the two communities that you ought to join together, that a new school would be better for them. So I spent a lot of time down in Claremont and Groveland talking to parents, going to community meetings and so forth, to get the support of the people there. Because I wasn't going to do anything until I got support, which we did. And so we finally built the school. But it was a challenge to build a consolidated high school at that time.
How do you think churches can be involved in the schools?
Well, I think churches should be very active. One of the projects I had as superintendent, one of the first things I did, I sent a letter to every church in Lake County and expressed to them that what I'd like to do, that what I thought was that the churches and their members could be valuable assets to the schools by having mentoring programs for the students that went to their church. So I sent out a letter to every church inviting every minister in Lake County to a meeting to talk about this. Now, all of them didn't come, but an awful lot of them did. And we actually began that. We developed a procedure to talk to and orient the people in church that wanted to be mentors or willing to be a mentor. And then we went to them and gave a kind of a lesson, so to speak, of what you can do and what would help. And I was really pleased with that. We had a lot of churches that, in Mount Dora, for example, Mount Dora Methodist was one of our big mentoring churches. And we had would have a lot of students that would just go by the church, and the mentor would meet them there and go over their lessons or whatever they were doing with them. And it wasn't just mentoring subject matter. We also requested them to become mentors to specific students at specific schools. And so a lot of the people would volunteer then by going to a school and saying, I want to be a mentor to help you. And a school would assign them some student they thought they could be helpful to. And the mentors, what I found was the mentors helped the students a lot with the subject matter, but they helped just as much by just talking to that student and just seeing what's the problem and how they might could help the student and so forth. And this is a biggie. I didn't mention this, but when it goes to teachers and mentors here, before a student is going to learn, they have to know that whoever is teaching them or mentoring them cares about them. If they don't believe that person cares about them, it's going to be a tough row to hoe to teach. And so the caring part is very, very important. And that's one of the things that we ask the mentors to do is just show the student that they care about them. Research shows that if we have one person in life that we know cares about us, we have an opportunity to make it. Some of these kids have nobody that cares about them or they believe cares about them. And when that's the situation, then that's a tough life.
How could civic clubs like Kiwanis and Rotary make a difference?
Well, the civic clubs are very important to schools. They're like schools. They can only do what they're able to do. But all of our civic clubs, I think most civic clubs have a priority of assisting something to do with the schools and students within the community. So mentoring is the same thing. Civic clubs could say, okay, we're going to be mentors, and as a Kiwanis club, for example, who wants to volunteer and go become a mentor. In addition to that is support of activities. Schools today are much like they used to be money-wise. They don't have a bunch of extra money to do little things for their kids. So from time to time, community organization, our civic club, could simply give or donate money to a school for a certain project to do something. You could also go in, for example, if a school had a particular activity that went on year-round, the club could volunteer to go in and become part of that year-round. As an example, Mount Dora Kiwanis Club assists Triangle Elementary School on a yearly basis. They have a school store. They give the students rewards for doing certain things, and when student accumulates, it's actually play money. When they accumulate enough play money, they can go to the store where we've gone out and gotten supplies donated to the school. So we operate that school store for them on a monthly basis. So there's things like that could be done. Every little thing that a civic organization can do that will help a few kids is good and worthwhile.
Give you your notes in case I missed anything.
Tell them about your sign, Ron. Is it good for the student?
My what?
Is it good for the student?
Oh, okay. You're going to edit this so you can go back and plug things in, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that, well, the very first thing I did, as a matter of fact, when I became superintendent of schools, I'd already decided that this was going to be a project for me, so to speak, our slogan. And so I personally had a local artist draw me up a sign that said, "Is it good for the student?" Very simple. Is it good for the student? And so I hammered that every day just about for the 8 years that I was superintendent. And when we would have department meetings about things that we were planning for the district, or if a school was going to do something and ask questions about it, the question I would always ask them is, well, okay, is this going to be good for the student? We're not going to do it just to do it. We're not going to do it because you want to do it. We want to be sure that it benefits the student and it's good for the student, and then we'll do it. And I felt like that was one of the better directions that we took during the 8 years I was in office, because it became kind of a saying all over. It kept hammering home, and it's simple. It's just a simple thing. If I make a decision, I'm going to implement a new program, okay. Is it going to be good for the student? If it is, let's go for it. Let's do it.
Anything else you want to share with us?
Hey, what else?
And we may have covered it all.
Well, there's one area I could cover a little bit that might help you. If I were superintendent again, or when I was superintendent, if there's one part that I wish I could have done better, would have been to visit schools more and go into classrooms more and visit with teachers more and just be seen more. Now, I did a lot of that. I think I did more of that than most superintendents do, but I don't think you can do enough of that. And one of the things that bothered me about being superintendent was I went into the superintendency seriously with in mind, I'm going to affect schools and I'm going to give leadership to teachers that they need and support that they need. And that's all I wanted to do. Well, what I found out is that I don't control the job controls me as superintendent. And being superintendent's a big job. The school system has the biggest transportation system in Lake County, has the biggest lunch or food system in Lake County, has the biggest personnel system in Lake County, and just on and on like that. So it's big business. And I found out during that time we started to grow in Lake County and needed to build some schools here and there. And dadgum, if I didn't have to become a realtor almost, which I never thought about being or doing. I was spending so much time in looking for sites for schools and trying to convince the board that this was the best site and building them and finding money to build them all with. That kind of thing just took more time than I ever envisioned of having rather than working with the schools. And school boards, I would be remiss if I didn't speak about school boards. I had some school board members that were absolutely wonderful. They knew what they were doing. They had experiences being educators, or they were good business people, and they had a lot of good common sense and wanting to do what was best for the school system. And I hate to say it, but I think we have had too many school board members who had a couple of things on their mind. One was they had an agenda of their own, that they wanted to try to change something to meet their own belief, whether it was right or wrong. And then we have way too many people that have tried to use or have used the school board as a stepping stone in the advancement politically. I want to be a school board member so I can run for the House of Representatives in Tallahassee, so I can run for something else. And in my view, that's just wrong. We shouldn't have anybody on the school board that is there for any reason other than doing the very best job and making the best support they can for the schools and the school system. So that always bothered me a lot when I was superintendent. I spent a lot of time dealing with those people that had an agenda of their own that we didn't need to talk about, but we had to talk about it. So I would like to have been able to spend more time if I could change everything.
Thank you for all of this.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Do you still have a copy of that sign that we can take a photo of?
Pardon me?
Do you still have a copy of your sign that we can take a photo?
My son has it.
Okay.
He probably has it down at Lake Hills. Do you know, Ellen?
I don't know if he may, I don't remember, but when, after you left, it was always hanging right in the school board building, right? As everybody came in, they had to see
I didn't
the
say
sign.
that. That's a reason that was the number one reason I made it. I hung it right behind the school board.
Mm-hmm.
And I made when I presented to the school board, my little spiel to them was, I'm looking forward to working with you, and as we do that, what I hope we will always do is make decisions based upon this sign, which I have had made and given to the school system, that we always do what's good for the student.
Well, Kelly has it, he has it someplace.
If it's something you want, you can get it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Y'all smile.
It's a serious subject, Ellen. You can't smile. So now I'm just being nosy. Do you have yearbooks from all the years you were in schools, or did you let them go?
No, I'm not a yearbook collector. Never have been. I don't know that I have any.
What, from Mount Dora?
Yeah.
I think we might. You want me to go see?
I just was curious.
Let me go, I think there's one of, the reason.
And so forth. My own daughter could not wait to go to kindergarten. We had her so excited and already knew her numbers and colors and ABCs, and she was so ready to go to school. And the happiest day of her school life was the day she started to school. Mm-hmm. Now that tells you something, see, right there. Mm-hmm. And it's a little stretch, but I use it as an example that if we're not careful, we quit keeping them interested and wanting to go.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I can't believe yearbook's $80 this year.
$80?
That's nuts.
What?
That's crazy.
Yeah, the school yearbook is $80.
Are you serious?
Nowadays. Yeah.
See, that's the reason I should have gone into that business.
You should have, yeah.
I know I'd been a multimillionaire now because that's serious.
Yeah.
But I'd had to run all over the state to do it.
Right.
And I was just a family man, and I told the guy I just can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, son, I want you to edit that good now.
Thank you.
Yeah.